Okay, we are going to talk about the 3 types of adaptations. We are on page 48 in your journal, page 48. And we're going to start off with the definition on the top 2 lines. I had to write really small and squeeze it in because I've got a foldable that's going to cover the rest of the page. I got this from your textbook, pages 293, where it says, an adaptation is an inherited trait that improves survival and reproductive success of an organism. That's what we consider an adaptation. And so we're going to write that at the very top. I also added it increases the survival of the organism and sometimes the species. So I added the word species. So put that at the very top. And then here's our foldable. A lot of times they want you to cut on the dotted line. Not this time. This time we're cutting on the outside perimeter solid line all the way around. And once we get that extra cut off, then we're going to use that dotted line as our fold line. So we're going to fold on that line. And once we fold on that line, then we've got it like this. Then we're going to cut only to the fold on the solid lines so that we have 3 flaps, just like that. Now, if I had measured carefully, I would have made it to where these could go across, but I didn't. So you're going to have to turn it on its side, and we're putting on, again, page 48. You're only going to put glue on the back where it says types of accommodations. So it will be glued in just like this, and you'll be able to lift the flaps of all 3. Okay, just like that. So that's on page 48. So we've got adaptation types, we got the definition of adaptations, and now I'm going to turn my journal sideways so that we can complete our foldable. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to write the number 3 here because there are 3 types, and those 3 types are called structural, behavioral, and physiological. Structural, behavioral, and physiological. So underneath structural, in parentheses, I'm going to write, this is a part of the animal, okay? A structural part of the animal. And if I define that, I'm going to define it on the back, and I'm going to write that it is a physical part of an organism So a physical part of an organism that helps the organism and or the species to survive in their environment. And some examples of that, so examples might be the long neck of the giraffe. That's a physical part of the giraffe that helps it to reach its food. Might be the blue tongue that doesn't get sunburned when their tongues are out in the sun all day. Some animals even have a blue tongue to show that they are poisonous or something. If you've ever seen chicken feet compared to a duck's feet, the duck has webbed feet. That helps it to move in its environment and helps it to survive by giving it a way to get away from predators or to get to its food. If you've ever seen a hummingbird's beak compared to, say, a chicken's beak, they eat different foods. Their environments are a little different. What they eat is different, so their beak shape is different. So beak shape is an example of a structural adaptation. Okay? The next one that we're going to talk about is a behavioral adaptations. We're going to close this one. A behavioral adaptation is a choice or a voluntary action. And on the back of that, so a behavioral adaptation is an action that's done on purpose. It's a choice that helps to increase the chance of survival of the organism and or the species. Some examples are like the whales that go to warm waters to have their babies. Whales have blubber that insulate them from the cold, but their babies do not. And so by going to the warm water to have their babies, they are increasing the chances that that species is going to survive. So we call that instinct to move. The direction that they go is instinctive, but whether to go or not is a choice. It's a behavioral adaptation. So migration in the winter or whatnot. We also have, the example in our book was the fish swim in schools so that the dolphins were less likely to be able to eat them. So fish swim in schools. They choose to swim in schools. They don't have to, but that does increase their chance of survival. A lot of animals have mating dances or mating calls that attract a mate so that the species will survive. They'll be able to reproduce. A squirrel or any other animal that hoards away food, like squirrels bury nuts in trees in the ground so they can come back and eat them later when there's not as much food around. Those are all examples of behaviors that animals choose to do so that they can survive. The next one is physiological, which has to do with physical, but it's involuntary. So we're going to say that it's automatic. They don't choose it. It happens automatically. And so physiological is involuntary action or change that an organism makes to help it survive. It might help it survive, it might help the whole species survive. Some examples of that are when you get hot, your body automatically produces sweat. You don't choose that, it happens automatically. So humans sweating is an example. My dog gets a thick coat in the winter. He didn't choose that. It just happens. And then when it gets to be summer, he sheds. So a dog's thick coat that ensures that it'll be warmer in the winter, cooler in the summer. It's automatic. Another one is a puffer fish. So the puffer fish enlarges when it is frightened, and that's an automatic response. It's not a choice, it automatically happens. Okay, so these are physiological adaptations. Okay, so that is the 3 types of adaptations.